Hi, I'm Mark, and I'm an alcoholic, and I'm having the vapors. Thank you, Nancy, and I guess the committee who asked me to come and share for this extended period of time. Hopefully you won't get tired of me, and you won't get angry with me. You'll probably get angry with me. Let me just tell you a little bit about myself. I have a home group. My name is Rabbi Mark Rotenberg. I'm a professional. I'm a neuropsychologist and an ordained rabbi. I have a background in comparative religions. I work with addicted populations the majority of the time. And the reason I use my full name and title is because my lineage, my first sponsor was a fourth-generation direct descendant of Dr. Bob, and my new sponsor is also direct descendant of Dr. Bob. And Dr. Bob, when talking about the 11th tradition, specifically said the only way to violate that tradition, or technically ignore it, is to claim that you are the representative for this particular society in a public venue so that you can be put up on a pedestal, or to be so anonymous that an alcoholic in need can't find you. If you want to find me, Google me, you will find me. You will find my cell phone, you will find my name, you will find where I work, you will be able to come to my house and harass me. Just be careful, I have big dogs. Other than that, you're okay. So, I have a home group. My home group is day openers, day breakers. I was going to say that. I don't know why. It's every day. It's because I've been up since then. It's 7 o'clock in the morning, every morning, 365 days a week. I think the only exceptions are hurricanes, I think. I've been in Florida for about 3 years. I got sober on the west coast of the United States, not Florida. That would be the real West Coast, the California side. And so I'm going to give you a little bit of the California understanding of the steps, and maybe we'll talk about traditions. And I'm going to intersperse my story through them. So I can give you just a little bit of background. I'm definitely an alcoholic. My sobriety date is February 8th in the year of our Lord 2000. That's Anno Domini for those of you that are Catholic. And so I got sober on the West Coast, and I had strong sponsorship. I've gotten sober twice in my entire life. The first time I got sober also in Venice Beach, California, under what was called fellowship-based recovery, right? Like, I went to a ton of meetings. I had a ton of boys. We would go to shows every night, and punk shows and slam dance and go to clubs, and we'd just like out all night. We'd go to 2-3 meetings a day. We'd surf. We'd go out at night, and it was awesome. And I stayed relatively distracted, right, and relieved for almost 4 years. I didn't have a sponsor. Not true. I had a sponsor. It was me. I was an awesome sponsor. I let myself do whatever the F I wanted to, as long as I didn't get loaded. I was like, yeah, that's totally cool. And so I was a great sponsor. Oddly enough, what I got from that was a huge amount of relief, right? I got relief from the fellowship, I got relief from the friends, and I got relief from distractions. What I didn't get is freedom, because I didn't work a step. I had no clue, right? And in retrospect, I have to tell you that one of the biggest curses of my entire recovery was the first time I got loaded. The first time I got sober, the obsession to drink was lifted immediately. And I'm a real alcoholic. I also did dry goods, strong ones, starting early on at age 14. I was coming up in the punk scene in San Francisco where I grew up, and it was a completely different scene back then. And, I got into the dry goods very young, but I always was in love with alcohol. It was my first love, my last love, my interim love. Everything else was just adjunctive, right? It was mood altering. There's a great... the end of page 568 in our book, in Appendix 2, there's a Herbert Spencer quote. One of my favorite Herbert Spencer quotes is not in the book. And it says that addiction lies not in better living through chemistry, but in the self-deluding location of the divine in drugs, right? It had always been a spiritual pursuit for me from day one, right? Day one. My parents were Holocaust survivors, which made them, I guess you could say, emotionally constipated, might be the correct term. They were really, there's a lot of guilt and weirdness, and I was the baby, and I was adopted. So I just got my 23andMe back like 6 months ago, and I am 94% Irish. So I mean, if you're asking about probability of me being an alcoholic, I'm probably really high in the stratosphere. Plus, I was given up for adoption in the very early 60s in San Francisco. And, I mean, who gives up a perfectly good white child in San Francisco in the 60s? Hippie junkies. That's who does it. So the genetic predisposition was there, guaranteed, right? Then you put that into an emotionally constrained survivor guilt, Holocaust survivor, Orthodox family that I grew up in. And basically all you have to do is add a shot of tequila, and I won the alcoholic trifecta. Like, instantly that was going to happen, right? So I know that this is not about my story, but since you got me for 12 weeks, I'm going to sprinkle it like it's magic dust all over the place, all right? So I'm going to set my timer because I was informed that I need to continue to talk until exactly 5 minutes before the end of the hour. And understand that I worked in treatment and was a pulpit rabbi at the same time. This is not an issue for me, okay? Just giving you a heads up. We may not even get to step 1 today. It's anybody's guess, seriously. So I'm going to set my little alarmy thing, okay? So just bear with me for 2 seconds. I got a brand new phone because my other one was junky. And the one thing I did get from my father, who was an Orthodox Jew from Berlin, is I am cheap as shit. I had my last phone for like 5 years. It was ridiculous. All right. It is now 10:15. Is that when you want me to end? How many minutes is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 15. Math is not my strong suit. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35. I could see it. Just listen. There's no shame in my game. There's a lot of weirdness, but not a lot of shame. All right, so let's start this, and we'll leave that there. So I'm going to start with the steps, but I know I'm supposed to start with step 1. I'm not going to because I'm a bit of a contrary bitch. So we're going to go ahead and do something a little different. And this is totally not working for me. So Jody, right? Jody was awesome because she read the 12th step correctly. Hi. Do I thumb?
No, just say right. Good.
That's all it does.
That's all you got.
You hear me?
That's all you got.
Do you want me to get louder?
No.
So Jody's awesome because she read this 12th step. And I always start step 1 by talking about the 12th step, right? Because 90% of the time, the 12th step is read wrong. Somebody raised their hand. Not you. Somebody real. Okay. These are my ringers. I loaded the front row. You don't know, right? Would you read the 12th step off the wall for me?
Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of...
Say it again.
Hi, my name is Gwen.
No, just again.
Okay. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these...
Stop. Read it again. Yes, she read it wrong. Twice in a row. Ooh, hit her. Hit her with the truth. Hit her with the truth. Tell her what it is. What she did is...
Had a spiritual awakening as the result...
The result. Now it's right? This is why I start with this step. Because 90% of the people will read it off the wall, off the paper, and will tell you this. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, it's not a result of these steps. It is the result. It is the only singularity promise that occurs from this entire process. What we know today neurologically, in terms of neuroscience and psychology, is that the 12 steps are a standalone cognitive behavioral change model. They alter our behavior, which alters our neurology, which creates polypeptide chains that create neuroplasticity, which make us behave differently. We know this for a fact. Peer-reviewed. Dr. Bob and Bill didn't know it. Dr. Silkworth had a thought about it and had an inkling and knew it empirically, but did not have the data to prove what we know now. And what we know now is the only thing that is promised from the entire process is a spiritual experience. That's it. You don't get a car, you don't get a girlfriend, you don't get a new job, you don't get none of that. You get a spiritual experience, a profound paradigm shift in the way you look at life, your reaction to it, and your responses as a human being. If you do that, you get all the other shit. It's the byproduct, right? And the reason I bring that first is because of the cyclical nature. Because the 12th step means after that, I practice these principles in all of my affairs. I carry this message to others. Page 164 of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, the last page. Our book is meant to be suggestive only. We realize we know only a little. God will constantly disclose more to you and to us. Ask Him in your morning meditation what you can do for the man who is still sick, and great events will come to pass for you and countless others. This is the great fact for us. But obviously, you cannot transmit something you haven't got. And I didn't have anything to transmit. Shit, I was not a vision for you. I wasn't a vision for anybody. Like, for real. I was like, not a vision. Not even close when I got here, right? What I learned through the process, through good sponsorship, through the steps, and through the way I was taught the steps, is that what I did not have before the work was I did not have the capacity to receive with grace. And if I couldn't do that, if I didn't have that, everything I tried to give to someone had a marker attached to it every single time. I could not give unconditionally, which means I could not transmit the beauty of this program and the love that I learned until I learned to receive. And I'll tell you why, because I'm an alcoholic and a drug addict, and I am a thief like you wouldn't believe. And I thought I was a good one. Plus, if you open the 12 and 12, page 31, it says psychiatrists believe that defiance is the number one characteristic of the alcoholic. Number one. I am defiant as shit. Which means if you tell me to do something, what do you think my first response is? No. Yeah, there's something in my eye. That's my response, right? Because it's not my idea. It took me years to understand that, first of all, I've never had a new idea. Not once, not ever. Like, that never happens. There's no such thing as a new idea. Oh, great, telephone, cell phone, new idea. No. There's dudes in caves burning, banging drums and doing smoke signals like 10,000 years ago trying to accomplish the same task. Same problem. New approach to its solution. Same problem. Old idea, right? I never had a new idea. And it never dawned on me to steal a good idea. I was so resistant to people when they tried to transmit something to me. I'm like, no, not my idea. Right? Didn't want to do it. And then it dawned on me, because someone told me, if you steal that idea, then it's your idea, and then you can use it. Wow. So the reason I say this is because I want you to know that there is not one word that I am going to say that is my opinion. Everything is plagiarized, purloined, and pilfered from every person I've ever met in Alcoholics Anonymous. Some great minds and some not so great minds. But it's still amazing because before I got sober, I stole stupid ideas from stupid people. Now that I'm sober, I steal good ideas from smart people. To give you an example of that, let me say this. When I got back from the Army in Israel in '83, I had a little post-trauma. And I got a job tending bar because I couldn't go to college because I was incapable of thought. And I ended up at City College of San Francisco, which is like high school 2.0. And I couldn't make it to an 8 o'clock class, but I could tend bar at 6 in the morning, know that. And I was opening the bar at 6 in the morning, and I found this little bar by the school. It was called the Joker Club. And I fashioned myself an intellect of sorts. And the reason I chose this bar is because you know that Joker with the dingle bally hat thing that what are those things called? The gesture, whatever it is. They don't know those words. But that was their logo. But they had a motto. And the motto said, the Joker Club, time is never wasted if you're wasted all the time. And I was like, that is the most profound shit I have ever heard in my entire goddamn life, and I am moving into this place. And that's what I did. And so understand that it is still the same circumstance. I'm just stealing from way smarter people. Way smarter people. So, because the spiritual experience is the only thing that is inherently promised by this entire process, I think it would be untoward of me not to explain it or talk about it a little bit. Okay? And the problem is that in our text, the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, along with the 12 and 12, in the body of the text, the first 164 pages, 181 if you include Dr. Bob's Nightmare, which has been sacrosanct since the first publishing of the book. The truth is there are only two stories, two narratives that describe the entire goal of this process. It is repeated over and over again. There are 7 footnotes in the first 40 pages. Yet, there's only 2 narratives. And one is from our friend Bill, who, let's just say, employed artistic license at times in the way that he described things. And on page 13 and 14 and 15 of Bill's story, we see that, where he talks about his experience in a hospital, where he sits up in bed, and a great wind of spirit takes him to the mountaintop, and everything's cured, and Jesus comes out of heaven and says, "Amen, brothers and sisters, can I help you?" Heals him, strikes him sober. Awesome. Dude, I want that so bad. So bad. But then if I spend 2 seconds thinking about it, I'm glad I didn't have it. Because I'm a real alcoholic. Which means if I do something and it's awesome, I'm going to try and do it 1,050 more times within the first week. So if I did have a white light spiritual experience, Friday night I would not be here. I would be at home making sure the snakes were devenomized so I could go to my Southern Baptist Pentecostal church tomorrow and shake them and get the spirit up in me, because I want that again, that visceral ecstatic experience over and over and over again, because that's the alcoholic I am. Let me ask you a question. Do you remember the first time you got drunk?
I do.
You do. What's your favorite candy bar? Do you remember your first Reese?
I do not.
Of course you don't, because you're an alcoholic like me. I would stab a guy in the penitentiary for lemon heads. I can't remember the first lemon head. So we have this story, right, of Bill, and it's a white light experience that happens in a hospital. And then the second narrative is on page, anybody know, 56 and 57, the last few pages of the Agnostic. And that's our friend, John Fitzmayo. His stories in the back of the book are Southern Friend, but it's excerpted. Oh, I said it right. I was worried about that word. On page 56 and 57, the end of We Agnostics. And it's also very intense and visceral in white light, right? You know, he's in a hospital. He's sick. You got to remember, visualize it. It's the 30s. There's no TV. There's no radio. They're still giving like ice pick lobotomies and throwing people in ice to calm the spirits in them. You know, it's not so great, right? Not the pinnacle of loving, kind mental health care, you know? And some random guy walks into his room. "Brothers, I've had a spiritual experience. Let me tell you about it." Right? One night when confined in a hospital, do you want to follow on page 56? He was approached by an alcoholic who had known a spiritual experience. Right? If I was sick and kicking and throwing up and stuff coming out of other orifices in a white padded room with no television and no radio, and some random dude came into my room and started preaching at me, yeah, I would not be a happy guy. I'd be like, "Oh, look, there's something else in my eye. Get out of here." First of all, how did you get on this locked ward, right? So what happens to our friend, right, on page 56, right? He was approached by this alcoholic who'd known a spiritual experience. He does the same thing. Our friend's gorge rose, right? His bile, his viscera from inside comes up. Same expression as I threw up in my mouth, right? As he bitterly cries out, if there is a God, he hasn't done anything for me. Which means the guy was preaching at him. Then what happens? The guy leaves. He tumbles out of bed to his knees. Now, let me tell you something. I have been hammered. I have been shit hammered a lot. And I have fallen out of bed, I've slid, I've rolled. I've done that thing where you like try to get into bed, but you miss, and you like face plant. I've done that, but I have never like tumbled out of bed, backflip, skipped the landing, ready to pray. It's never happened, not once ever. But that's what happened to our friend Fitz. Comes flying out of bed, he's washed over by an intensity, and a miracle occurs to him. I direct you to the bottom of the page. That very night, years ago, it disappeared. What disappeared? His alcoholic problem was taken away. I'm not Fitz. My alcoholic problem's not taken away. It's been a minute since I've had a drink. Know that, right? But I'll tell you this. You know, on Christmas time, that Corona commercial with the super attractive guy and the girl in Adirondack chairs on the beach with 4 beers in a bucket in between them, and that freaking palm tree with the Christmas lights? You know that one. I shit you not. Every time I see that commercial, the very first thing in my head is, those were the days. That's when it worked. My alcoholic problem's not taken away because I have fond memories about shit that never happened. Still to this day. Those were the days. Those were never the days. I was in a dingy, shitty bar at 6 o'clock in the morning. I had to step over like needles to get to the bathroom, where they had the velvet curtain so the vampires didn't melt when they opened the door. It's not on a beach in an Adirondack. What are you talking about? It never happened, not even once. That's what my mom would say. That's how it was. So I still have that. So my alcoholic problem is not taken away. I lean towards the Dr. Bob side of the family. And I'll quote out of another one of our conference-approved texts. So page 69 in AA Comes of Age. Bill writes about Dr. Bob. And he says, Dr. Bob's drinking was continuous. He never had a moment of sobriety. And when he got too shaky to operate, he would sedate himself heavily, and when that didn't work, he would steal away to a drying out place for a week or two, and then start the cycle all over. Because Bob's spiritual release did not come quickly. It was painfully slow and required the sharpest form of vigilance and the most diligent work, when only days and nights of carrying the message to other alcoholics could make him forget about his urge to drink. And the second time I got sober, that was my story. Because the first time, it left me. Which means I did absolutely nothing for 3.5 years until I ended up in my head going, you know, maybe you're not an alcoholic. Maybe that was just a bad patch. Now, granted, it was a 20-year bad patch, but it was just, you know, a protracted bad patch. And I woke up one morning with a bottle of tequila in my hand, have no idea how it got there, and that was it. And I was done. And the second time I got sober, it wasn't removed. And I wanted to drink and get high every minute of every day for at least 6 or 7 months. And worse than that, I pretty much wanted to punch everybody in the throat. Like, if you were smiling, I wanted to headbutt you. If I would just go into a meeting and see people happy, and I just wanted to freaking choke them till they had petechial hemorrhages. Let alone those, like, I used to go to meetings in LA, like in Hollywood, and there'd be like the Valley Girls. They'd be like, God is like totally working in my life, you know? Because like today, I wanted to go to Nana's on Melrose, and there was no parking, and I drove around the block one time, and there was a spot right in front. God loves me. Choke the shit out of you. That is not God. It's not even a parking ferry. It's the flow of traffic. So when I got into the rooms, I knew that I was powerless. But I didn't want to admit it. It's funny, if we look, let's get into it. So all these spiritual releases need to come slow. And for me, they came slow, and I'm actually grateful that they did. Because I have an insatiable desire for ecstatic experiences, if it came that fast, I would not be here. I would be chasing that experience continuously. I know myself. I am a pig. From day one, I always have been. Yeah. So, I need to understand these steps. And I knew that I was powerless. I knew that the first step said we admitted that we were powerless. In my brain, I thought it was WE'. Somebody pointed out to me, like, no, that's past tense, bro. Well, I'm like, then why do I want to drink? And more importantly, why do I want to punch you in the mouth? Because I'm powerless over how much I hate your guts because you're happy. And he's like, dude, get into the step. And I did. And what I learned originally about the first step was that I had difficulty with the first step, but I didn't have difficulty with the first concept of the step, which is on page 31. And on page 30, it says, we learned that we had to concede to our innermost self that we were alcoholic. This was the first step in recovery. Not the first step in the steps. It's the first step in recovery. Trust me, by the time I was 14, I had conceded to my innermost self that I was alcoholic. I drank and partied unlike anyone I knew, to the extent that I hid it from every single one of my friends. But I always had the existential pain, that fear, that spiritual kind of feeling of like not being right. Shit, I remember when I was 7. I would go to my friend Nate's house, and me and Nate and Leon, we'd be playing. And then, because my dad was this Berlin anal retentive German Jewish guy, we had to eat at 5:30, like on the dot. Like, you must beat papers. Well, your papers. Like, that's who my dad was, right? Like, we would go on a road trip on Sunday. We had to be by the car for inspection, like 45 minutes early. Like, I kid you not. And I would leave, and they'd still be playing. And my first thought was an alcoholic thought. The minute I walked out of that house, I'm like, now they're playing with the good shit. They waited till I left, and they took out the good toys, and and the only reason they're playing with me anyway is because my mom called their mom and made them play with me, and they didn't give me the key to the honeycomb hideout. Because there's people in my head that are not my friends. They've always been there. The damage is they all sound like God. A lot. Just so you know. So I understood that I was, and had always been, in that concession. I knew that there was a problem to the point where I'm 14 and I'm not telling anybody what I'm doing. I'm partying with my friends, but I'm pre-gaming and hiding my drug use and doing all this other stuff because I know that that's not right. I know it's not right. I conceded years before, because a concession is when you're hammered in. Anybody watch UFC, right? They tap out. That's a concession. I conceded a long time ago. I didn't know there was a solution. I had no idea. I had no idea. I had thought that concession made me abjectly hopeless, where I would never be able to change or be better. Right? Never. And then I go to meetings in California, which is an awesome place, but like anywhere else in the world, there's a bunch of whiny bitches at meetings. I hear, I found this over my boss, he's such a jerk, and my girlfriend's a bitch, and my cat shit in my shoes, and I wanted to punch everybody. I swear to God, I hated them so much. And then I told my sponsor, dude, I'm powerless, because he would always say, well, what are you doing about it? I'm like, I'm powerless. He goes, dude, shut up. Just shut up. My sponsor, God, this guy, he was a huge asshole, but it was exactly what I needed. He would tell me, I want you to call me every day and tell me how you're feeling. So I call him up and I'm like, hey, Tony, it's Gromit. Hey, Gromit, how you feeling? Well, life's pretty good today. It's not bad. You go like, you'll pass. And then he'd hang up the phone. And then the next day I'd be like, you know what? It's really hard today, man. Like, I feel powerless. It'll pass. He didn't even get to finish the sentence. He hung up the phone. Hung up the phone on me every day for a year. Taught me one important lesson. It'll pass. And I mean, everything passes. And he was right. You know? But he sat me down and explained this step to me. When I would complain and say I'm powerless, he'd go, you're just a punk, and you're using it as an excuse to not own your responsibilities and change your life. You are holding yourself away from the educational variety of the spiritual experience on page 567. He finally realizes he has undergone a profound alteration, his reaction to life, and that such a change could hardly have been brought about by himself alone. Open your ears, do what you see, learn to listen and listen to learn, and then do the shit that you learned, and you will have a change. And he literally shoved my face into the book, page 45, middle of the page. My favorite thing in the entire book. And I still, to this day, yell at people a lot. You can tell I probably yell at people. You can ask these guys. I yell at them all the time. I yell at people. I hear somebody whining about being powerless. I literally open the book, shove your face in the book. What's the matter with you? Page 45, right? What does it say? Lack of power. That was our dilemma. Am I on the right page?
Yes.
I am. I don't even know where I'm at. There it is. Lack of power. That was our dilemma. The problem was I lacked power. If I lack money, my problem is lack of money. My solution is to get a job and get some money. If I lack a vehicle, my solution is to get a job, get some money, get a vehicle. If I lack a significant other, my solution is not to hustle them like I used to, but maybe become a man of dignity and integrity that might attract someone that is actually okay, as opposed to my old philosophy, which was the Groucho Marx, I would never join a club that would have me philosophy, right? Lack of power, that was our dilemma. Well, if I lack power, then obviously, logically, my solution is to acquire power. It says it right in the book. Obviously, lack of power, that was our dilemma. We had to find a power by which we could live. And it had to be a power greater than us. Obviously! But where and how do I find it? That was always my trauma. And my sponsor said, did you even read the next sentence? No. Well, that's exactly what this book is about. Its main object is to help you find a power that will solve your problem. Which means, you ever seen those things on the wall that say, like, step 1 is surrender and step 2 is hope, and like they got all these principles, right? Well, the principles are not listed anywhere because they're inherently different for every person. However, the principle of step 1 for me is simple. It's hope, not surrender. If I was powerless, that means right now I am in the position to be empowered. I'm sober 18 and a half years. I got a lot of goddamn power. A lot. I have a ton of power in my life today. I will say this, none of it came from me. It all came from outside sources. Remember I told you how I stole everything? Well, shit, I stole that too. But when you steal it from God and somebody offers it from you, it's not really stealing. It just makes me feel better to think I do. You understand? It's a gift, but I stole that shit because I got gas. You don't even know. It just makes me feel better. So I just go with it. Right? You had to find a power by which you could live, and it had to be a power greater than yourself. Again, past tense. Lack of power was my dilemma. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol. Hyphen, that our lives. Not and, that our lives have become unmanageable. A hyphen in Latin is ipso facto. Connects two divergent ideas that are seemingly unrelated, but are related through cause and effect. If this, then this. If I'm powerless, my life's unmanageable. If I try to manage my life, things outside of myself, and control my environment, I'm going to fail, which makes me powerless. It's a cycle. I can't break it unless I open myself up to relief to get some power. That power allows me to do a different approach to my life and start to work. I am not powerless today. Shit, I'm not powerless over anything. I'm not powerless over the weather. It rained. I'm not powerless over the fact that I had a 15-minute delay on the way here because there was an accident after Boca. No, I'm not powerless. I altered my reaction to that circumstance. How did I do it? I typed it into my phone, and it showed me that there's an 18-minute delay, so I left early. When it rains, I use an umbrella. If I was powerless, I would have died of heat prostration the day I moved to Florida. I'd have walked out of my house in 90-degree heat in a parka. Been like, I don't get it. Right? I'm not powerless. I cannot control the circumstance, but I can become empowered in how I react to it. And that's exactly what this is. That's why I read that piece from Appendix 2. We alter our reaction to life. I have undergone a profound alteration in my reaction to life. That alteration occurs because I've opened myself up to receive power over the last 18 years. It's given me new ideas, new direction, a new solution to my life. That's exactly what this book is about. It's about how to get some goddamn power. Let me tell you something. You think that this book would be full of the word powerless over and over and over and over and over and over again. Shit, you hear so many people whining about it. The word powerless appears one time in the first 164 pages of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Appears on page 59 in the first step in past tense. One time. That's one. For those of you that are mathematically deficient like me. One. The word power, powerful, and empowerment appears 72 times in the same pages. You don't believe me? Get one of those big book concordances. It'll prove it to you. And if not, I fight you over that spiritual principle in the alleyway. Come on. Lack of power is my dilemma. My take on the first step through my experience is that I don't ever have to be powerless again. I'm not powerless over the weather. I dress appropriately, or I bring an umbrella. I'm not powerless over traffic. I leave early. I do my research. I'm not powerless over people. Shit, Sean's a jerk. He's on my pay no mind list. He's not getting a Hanukkah card. That's not happening. That needs a goy, so it doesn't even matter. I'm not powerless. When people are toxic, I cut them out of my life. I don't need you to make me sick. I work too hard for me not to be sick, to let you make me sick again. And I'm a sick person. See, you could say this to a normal person, they wouldn't know. But if I tell you this about the obsession of drinking, when I'm not drinking, I'm thinking about drinking, because when I have to drink to think about drinking, because I have to drink, I have to think about drinking to drink in the first place. So then I can't drink if I'm not thinking about drinking. Everybody in this room understood that shit. You say that to anybody else, they're like, you're crazy. I'm already sick. Like, I'm not even a quarter of the way up the arc. Like, barely. Like, forget about it. I'll be working on this in my next lifetime for sure. Right? But what I do know is I'm not powerless over anything except the second drink. That means if I choose to pick up my first drink, I throw away every modicum and micron of power that I've collected over 18 and a half years over a stupid-ass idea. I'm sure there's one or two people that might have relapsed in this room. Let me tell you something. This is how insidious this disease is. Your brain was sober when it chose to drink. That's some bullshit. If I remember that I continuously maintain, retain, and open myself up to receive power, which is the premise of the first step, I don't ever have to give it away. Not once, not ever. That's the beauty. That's exactly what this book is about. Its main object is to help me find a power greater than myself that will solve my problem. And trust me, I got a lot of problems. Like, some are visible, plainly. Some are a tad more sublimated, just saying. But I never thought that surrender was a subjugation of my will. It was an empowerment. When I realized that if I stopped stealing stupid shit from stupid people, I could get power, everything changed for me. Everything changed. And I am not willing to give that power away. It's like this. I'm sure that one or two of you have been in a relationship that maybe didn't end perfectly, just saying. And you might have been, upset about that. I don't know, maybe, right? You're not upset because they're off with somebody else. You're upset because all the time, effort, and money you invested in this thing reaped zero dividends. You should have just stood in front of the toilet and flushed $100 bills down it. It's the same thing that happens when I choose to pick up that first drink. That's why it says it's the first drink that gets you drunk. Because I maintain my power to choose to pick up that drink or not. If I choose wrong, all my power goes away. All of it. All right, that's my take on the first step. We got 1 minute and 36 before the timer goes off. You want me to keep talking? I can do the same lecture in Hebrew and about halfway in Arabic, just so you know. So in Russian, German's better. But if you want to get crazy, we can pull it off. All right? So let me just reiterate one important thing. And that is that the entire goal, if I continue to open myself up to receive power and grow, every piece of power I have allows me to have a spiritual experience of the educational variety, right? That sentence is a scorecard. Another reason I've seen people relapse is because they can't keep track. Everybody in this room knows how to keep a marker for bad shit that's happened to them. Everybody does. I know I do. I got a Rolodex of people on my kill list from freaking when I was 4. Now, I don't have resentments towards them anymore. I call them spiritual convictions now because I'm enlightened. Like with hippies. It's a hippie thing. But I never knew how to keep score positively until I read that, until it was shown to me and explained to me and taught to me. He finally realizes, I have a realization. What do I realize? That I've had a profound alteration. I react completely different than my default setting. And then I realize that reaction is not because of anything I did, it's because I associate myself with people that want to be sober. Oh, that's my thingy. Look at that. No, that's wrong. Dismiss that too. Cancel that. Forget about it. All right. Because I associate myself with people that I learn from all the time, people that want to be men and women who are more spiritually enlightened and better people today than they were yesterday, and hopefully better tomorrow than they are today. Thanks for letting me share with you.